This teen had an abortion 8 months into her pregnancy, but what happened to the baby will make you cry, part 2. As doctors delivered the lifeless baby, they broke down in tears. They had never seen a baby this old get aborted, and they were heartbroken. Emily began crying profusely, realizing what she had just done. But as nurses prepared the body for disposal, a miracle happened. Before I tell you, I found a way you can go live under 1,000 followers using an app called Bigo. The link's in my bio if you want to go live too. All of a sudden, the baby began breathing again and was trying to cry. But Emily demanded the doctors to leave it be and not help it. However, 2 nurses who were in the hallway heard the crying and refused to just stand by and let this happen. They grabbed the little girl and rushed her to an incubator in one last effort to save her life. And by an absolute miracle, she recovered 3 weeks later. One of the nurses who saved her life ended up adopting her and naming her Mia. Years passed and she grew up in a happy household. This is her today. She ended up contacting her real birth mother and forgave her for everything they went through. This teen had an abortion 8 months into her pregnancy, but what happened to the baby will make you cry. Emily was a grade 12 student who had just moved to a new city back in 1977 after her father unexpectedly passed away. Her and her mom were this close to being homeless and it seemed like nothing could go right. But that's when she met a guy named Noah at school. They pretty much instantly hit it off and started dating. But only a few months later, everything changed when Emily found out she was pregnant. Although it was extremely unexpected, Noah was extremely supportive and together they decided to keep it. But when she told her mom about this, she was enraged. They were only 1 paycheck away from being on the streets and she demanded Emily to get rid of it. But Emily refused every single time. Months of arguing went by, all while the baby was getting bigger. But one day, Emily gave in and finally went to the clinic. They inserted saline into the fluid surrounding the baby and that was it. Doctors then prepared to deliver the lifeless baby. But when they saw it, they broke down in tears, like for part 2.
Here are 3 times when actors weren't acting. Number 1. In the show One Tree Hill, Lucas had cheated on Brooke, but really he actually cheated on her in real life. So the directors decided to film this scene on the same day so her emotions would be more real. Number 2. In this Quentin Tarantino movie, you can see this actress get pushed to the floor and get strangled. Well, for this close-up shot, he actually used his own hands to strangle her. Her acting looks so realistic here because she actually couldn't breathe. Number 3. From the TV show Friends, Ben and Ross decided to prank Rachel, so they led her to some stairs and then threw down a dummy. Rachel thought Ross actually got injured, so her screams and reactions were all real.
Why was Nikola Tesla so obsessed with the Great Pyramids of Giza? Not only do their coordinates match the exact speed of light, but their location on Earth is even stranger. Tesla found out that the pyramids were built at the exact point where the Earth's electromagnetic forces were at its highest. He also found an impossible coincidence between the Earth's elliptical orbit and the pyramids' relation to the equator. You see, the pyramids are located exactly 1/3 of the distance between the North Pole and the equator. Exactly how Earth orbits 1/3 of the distance between the Sun and Neptune. Not to mention they are perfectly aligned with true north, south, east, and west. But what's even stranger is the pyramid's relationship with the size of Earth itself. As you can see here, the dimensions of the pyramid exactly match the dimensions of Earth. Now you can't possibly tell me that's a coincidence. But what's even crazier is that this scale is not random. 432 is the exact unique frequency or vibration of planet Earth. It's absolutely unbelievable. Hit the plus for part 2.
Here are some pictures that will confuse 99% of you. This is a picture of a rock that's frozen. Somehow it looks exactly like a human heart. Here's a picture of some backpacks that look like they're from a cartoon. This is super confusing because they look too fake to be real. This picture is really confusing. Right now you're probably seeing shiny legs, but what it actually is someone's legs covered in white paint. Here's a picture of a lava pit that looks like it's sucking the souls of people down to hell. This picture was taken from someone's hotel room in Tokyo. It looks like the cityscape, but when you look closer, it's actually just a cemetery. And here's a picture that only 1% of people can see moving. Now comment if you can see it move.
This man gave his girlfriend a necklace, but years later when she realizes what's inside, she immediately breaks down in tears. Part 2. So after she took the necklace off and gave it to him, he split the necklace open, and when she saw what was inside, she immediately broke down in tears. But before I tell you what happened, I found a way you can go live under 1,000 followers using an app called Bigo. The link's in my bio if you want to go live too. She was speechless as he kneeled down and proposed to her. She couldn't believe that the entire time she had the necklace, there was a wedding wedding ring inside. And without any hesitation, she said yes and gave him a big hug. They're actually married to this day, and she still wears her necklace.
Here are 3 times when actors weren't acting. Number 1. During a scene in Stranger Things, Eleven was so tired that she fell back into Mike's arms. Well, it turns out she actually broke character because she was so tired from filming. You can even see Mike glance at the directors because he was actually worried. Number 2. From the movie Maleficent, they couldn't find a child actor that wasn't terrified of her, so they had to use her own daughter. And the acting in their scene together was really just her daughter trying to get her attention. Number 3. In Avengers Infinity War, Tom Holland actually improvised his death scene with Robert Downey Jr. His line where he says,
I don't want to go, I don't want to go, sir, please, I don't want to go,
was completely unscripted, which made his emotions feel way more real.
I'm gonna teach you how to do this.
Do it. What?
If you want to do this and dilate and shrink your pupil size on command, here's how. First, you need to imagine a dark room. Your pupil will automatically dilate to get more light to the retina. Now imagine a super bright light. It will do the opposite and shrink your pupil. Another way is to focus on a distant object. This will make your pupils bigger. Then focus on a nearby object that doesn't exist. Just use your imagination and your pupils will automatically constrict. The last way is to picture something that excites you. The boost of adrenaline will cause your pupils to dilate.
You were today years old when you found these out. The drawer under your oven isn't actually used to store pans. It's actually made to keep your food warm until you're ready to eat it. On a Tic Tac container, have you ever noticed this tiny little indent on the lid? Well, it's actually a Tic Tac dispenser to serve you 1 Tic Tac at a time. TikTok somehow knows everyone's gender, but we never gave them that information when we signed up. Typing this in the comments will give you a secret TikTok emoji. Go ahead and try it. Have you ever wondered why pen caps have holes at the top of them? Well, if someone accidentally swallows it, the hole will prevent them from choking. Some mice crawl into flowers and eat the pollen inside them. And sometimes they even fall asleep inside the flower. And if you want to go live under 1,000 followers, just press the link in my bio and download Bigo. Here's how babies see the world with their eyes. A newborn's vision is very weak. You can see some colors, but everything's blurred together. During months 1 to 3, you can focus on objects that are close. Your eyes will start to become more coordinated at working together, and you'll be able to grab small objects that you see. From months 4 to 6, Peekaboo is fun and exciting because it improves your coordination. At months 7 to 10, you'll be able to see things from far away and you'll be fascinated with your reflection. In months 11 to 12, you'll begin crawling and walking, which will improve your eye-hand coordination. And within no time, you'll have fully developed adult vision.
This man claimed he was pregnant until doctors discover he wasn't lying. Sanju was born in Nagpur, India, but always knew he was different. Growing up, he would find himself putting on makeup, wearing dresses, and playing with Barbies all the time. Throughout his entire childhood, he was bullied for it, but it never stopped him. By the time he reached age 28, he was absolutely obsessed with the idea of having a baby. And although Sanju was biologically male, he refused to believe that this would stop him, so he scoured the internet for months to find a solution. Along the way, he came across these things called epigenetics, which can change your DNA. So he immediately began experimenting on himself in hopes to make his dreams a reality. Months and months passed, but it seemed like nothing was working. Until one day he noticed a small bump at the bottom of his stomach. Over the next 3 weeks, his stomach began growing bigger and bigger every day. One day while Sanju was at work, he collapsed to the floor. He was immediately rushed to the hospital. But you won't believe what they found inside of him, like for part 2. This man claimed he was pregnant until doctors discover he wasn't lying. Part 2. Doctors performed a series of tests to find out what was wrong with him. And to their horror, they found out his body had been seriously altered. Turns out all the chemicals he'd been taking had been successfully absorbed into his body, which had created what they thought was a tumor inside his stomach. So doctors rushed him into emergency surgery to remove whatever was in there. But mid-surgery, a hand with long nails reached out towards them. But you won't believe what came out next. Before I tell you, I found a way that you can go live under 1,000 followers using an app called Bigo. The link's in my bio if you want to go live too. They ended up removing this humanoid creature from his body, but they later found out that this was actually his twin brother. You see, Sanju had actually swallowed his twin brother while they were in the womb. Since then, the twin had been living inside of him like a parasite, leeching off his blood. And Sanju's experiments had only accelerated the growth of it.
Here are 3 times when actors weren't acting. Number 1. In the movie Harry Potter, Harry's scream left the entire cast and crew in shock. Well, it turns out he was actually screaming for real because earlier that morning his grandma passed away. Number 2, in the show The Fresh Prince, Will Smith was supposed to be talking about his father in the show, but he was actually talking about his real father who left him as a child. All of his emotions were 100% real. Number 3, while filming the show Riverdale, the actor Luke Perry sadly passed away. And when they held the funeral for his character in the show, all of the actors were actually crying and showing real emotions. What would happen if every boy on Earth disappeared? First, half of the world's population would vanish, and the ladies left would have the time of their lives, until they realize they're out of water. That's because almost all the water treatment plant operators are men. Then, the entire globe's power would go out that night, because men make up 90% of electricians, mechanics, and engineers. But it gets worse, over 70% of the world leaders would be gone, causing a global apocalypse and the extinction of the human race.
What would happen if every girl on Earth disappeared? So about 4 billion girls would be wiped out and the boys would be left to fend for themselves. And about 70% of people in the medical field are actually women. So people would be dying left and right. Then the entire school system would collapse because most college students and professors are actually female. On top of that, 30 countries would lose their leaders and the world would fall into chaos. Then the boys would be left alone to go extinct. This woman did you-know-what with 919 men in one single day. Lisa Sparks set this record back in 2004 at the annual World Championships in Poland. She was competing against 2 other women, one of which was the current record holder who did you-know-what with over 759 people in one day. But the craziest part is that Lisa set this record in only 12 hours, meaning she only spent 45 seconds with each man. Hit the plus for more. These identical twins married another set of twins even though doctors told them not to do it. Twins Brittany and Brianna literally do everything together. They even went to law school at the same time and got the exact same grades. When they graduated, they started working at the same law firm and would go home and sleep in the same bed. That's when they met twins Josh and Jeremy and they instantly hit it off. And when it came time to pop the question, both the twins proposed at the exact same time. Weeks later, all 4 of them walked down the aisle together. After that, both couples moved to the same house and now live together. What's even crazier is they just got pregnant at the same time. But here's the thing, most of the time when 2 siblings have children, they're considered cousins. But doctors say that's not the case for them since they're identical twins. Instead, their children will be full siblings even though they have different parents.
Here are some 1 in a million coincidences that you won't believe happened. This bird landed on the page about itself. This RV aligns with the mountains in the background perfectly. This guy crashed his motorcycle and then landed on top of the car. These flamingos made a formation that also looks like a flamingo. Here's what happens to a Pepsi when it explodes and freezes at the same time. This fire breather looks like he's kissing a dragon. The lights on this restaurant sign went out, but it still spells restaurant. All 4 of these people are wearing the exact same shirt, but this is the only guy that notices. Here's a dog sitting down. Maybe you'll get it, maybe you won't. This Nokia phone was found fossilized in a rock, and when they took it out, the battery still worked. This boy threw his trash out the window, and it landed perfectly in the garbage, like for part 3. Here are some of the funniest yearbook quotes in the world. These 2 girls are sisters and one of them said I was planned and the other said I was not. This girl's name is Michelle Ho and she said I've been a hoe my whole life, which is literally true because of her name. This guy says he hates his name because his name is literally Carlos Carlos. How original. This guy says I hear everything because he's making fun of his big ears. This girl said I got a haircut and no one noticed because she's wearing a hijab. This girl said I went through 4 years of high school without a bad hair day. All 4 of these girls have the same last name, but they're not even related, so they made that very clear by saying we are not related. This girl was a complete savage and said I spent 113,000 hours of my life for a piece of paper and a handshake.
This girl slept with her snake every single night, but one day when it loses weight, she makes a shocking discovery. Camilla and her parents owned an exotic pet store back in 2010 and were the happiest family. They specialized in exotic snakes and they would have over 100 snakes in the house at one time. But when Camilla was only 17, her parents unexpectedly passed away in a car accident. At the time, they were transporting a crate of snakes and only one baby anaconda named Piper survived. And although Camilla was sad, the 2 instantly became best friends. Camilla would cuddle up and sleep with Piper at nights for years until eventually it was full-sized. The two were great together until one day Piper stopped eating. No matter what Camilla offered, he refused to eat and eventually lost a dangerous amount of weight. So one day she decided to take him to the vet. But you won't believe what they found out. Before I tell you, I found an app where you can erase anything from photos, and I mean literally anything. Links in my bio, but don't use it for bad. They found the snake had been doing this so it could eat Camilla. This girl hasn't washed her hair in 20 years, but you won't believe what came out of it. Little Amanda was the happiest kid. Everyone knew her for her luscious locks, and she had beautiful pencil straight blonde hair. But at the end of grade 6, she actually shaved off all her hair because her brother had been recently diagnosed with cancer. She sent a picture of herself to her boyfriend using email, and he was absolutely disgusted. So disgusted that he actually broke up with her and humiliated her at school. So she made it her mission to never wash or cut her hair ever again. Years started going by, and in high school her hair looked like this. And 20 years later, this picture was taken at a gas station in California, and clearly she had never washed her hair. So a news company actually approached her to find out what was inside of there, but you won't believe what came out of it. Before I tell you, I found a way that you can erase anything from pictures, and I mean literally anything. The link's in my bio, but don't use it for bad. They found thousands and thousands of maggots living in her hair.
This girl wore makeup every day for 30 years, but you won't believe what the doctors discovered. Part 2. The doctors took one look at her face and were horrified. They rushed her to the ER to try to save her face. The surgery was successful, but Carly was in extreme pain and she could barely move. The doctors put Carly through a series of tests to try to find out what was wrong with her. But when they took one look at her DNA, they couldn't believe their eyes. Before I continue, I found a way to erase anything from your photos, and I mean anything. The link's in my bio if you want to try it too. It turns out the chemicals from her makeup were absorbed into her body, causing a serious reaction. She did make a full recovery, but she is never wearing makeup ever again.
Here's a secret strategy to see if someone's lying to you. Now, this is from a former FBI agent, so listen carefully. The first thing you gotta do is watch the way they blink. Now, a normal person will blink about 5 to 6 times per minute, but a person who knows they're lying will blink their eyes 5 to 6 times really fast during that minute. And there's two very important things you need to watch out for. That is their eyes and the hand that they write with. For example, if you ask a right-handed person about something they've seen and they look up and to the left, that means they're accessing memories and aren't lying. But if that same person looks up and to the right, it means they're accessing the creative part of their mind and making up a lie. The same goes for something that they've heard. If they look towards their left ear, they're recalling something from memory. And if they look towards their right ear, they're about to lie to you. Hit the plus for part 2. Here's the truth behind the center of the earth. Now, I'm sure in school you were taught about the layers of the earth, but what you don't know is that you were taught wrong. So in school you were taught the earth has 4 layers: crust, mantle, outer core, and inner core. What your teachers didn't tell you is that that's only a theory. Now, because we can't actually drill to the center of the earth, scientists rely on seismic and magnetic analysis to predict what is down there. But here's the thing, those studies were done in 1906. Think about it, at that time, TVs weren't even invented yet, and they're still teaching it in school today. Now, there's this thing called the hollow earth theory, and even I thought it was crazy until I dug a little deeper. Because in 2014, scientists discovered something unbelievable. They discovered an ocean 400 miles underground that contains 3 times the amount of water in all of our oceans. So what if at the center of the earth, instead of magma, there's actually water?
Here are some 1 in a million coincidences that you won't believe happened. A dog gave birth to 3 puppies, each with their own number on their back. These guys sitting next to each other spelled out Cookie Monster. Here's a seagull standing on top of another seagull. After this plate dropped, it broke in half perfectly. While playing darts, a man accidentally killed a mosquito. This lottery ticket was 1 number off all 5 numbers. This tree has a very big branch. Maybe you'll get it, maybe you won't. This dog's white stripe lined up perfectly with the water's edge. These 2 women on a bus looked the exact same and they didn't even realize it. This tree broke in half but somehow missed the car. And this girl's dress camouflaged perfectly with the tree.
Pablo Escobar was so rich that when his daughter asked him for a unicorn, he did something no man has ever done. So as you probably know, Pablo Escobar had money. And I mean a lot of money. So much in fact that one time when his daughter complained she was cold, he gathered up some paper and made a fire to keep her warm. Yeah, the only thing is the paper was made up of $2 million cash. But you see, on her 5th birthday, Pablo's daughter wanted a unicorn. And obviously unicorns don't exist. At first, Pablo was stumped, unable to grant her only birthday wish. But then he got an idea. He called some friends and flew in a white horse on a private jet to Mexico. But you won't believe what he did to it. Before I tell you, I found a way you can go live under 1,000 followers using an app called Bigo. Links in my bio if you want to go live too. Pablo got his men to staple a horn and 2 wings to the poor horse. But sadly, the horse didn't survive this. And his daughter was left with nothing on her birthday.
Here are 3 actors who actually got injured in the movie. Number 1. In the movie Mission Impossible, Tom Cruise jumps between 2 buildings. You can see him slam into the building, slowly pull himself up, and then hobble off in pain. Well, that's because he actually broke his ankle when he missed the rooftop. But somehow, he still manages to stay in character and finish off the scene. Number 2. From the movie Back to the Future, you can see Michael J. Fox get hanged by a rope. Well, the acting looks so realistic here because he actually couldn't breathe. He eventually passed out and they had to call an ambulance. Number 3. In the movie Django Unchained, Leonardo DiCaprio slams his hand on the table and broke a glass which sliced his hand open. Although his hand is bleeding all over the place, he still manages to stay in character and finish off the scene.